How to sell more wine to hotels, coming up right now. I've been wanting to make this video for some time, and I'm pretty excited about it. It's one of my favorite topics. Selling to hotels is a game changer, but it's not easy, and I'm hoping this video will show you how to do a better job of it because the volume opportunities are enormous. That's really the number one reason to pursue hotels as an account type when you're trying to sell wine or spirits. These hotels are like mini cities, especially the larger hotels. The amount of volume they're capable of purchasing is pretty staggering. I have a funny story to tell you. Early in my wine sales career, I worked for a distributor in Houston, and we had a big sales room where all the salespeople would gather in the morning and get ready for their day. We would pick up copies of the invoices that all of our accounts had received that week. I'm sitting next to one of my fellow salespeople. On my invoices, I'm seeing, delivery sizes of 10, 15, 20 cases per account. I look over at his, and he's got 90, 100, 150 cases going to some of these accounts. Well, upon further inspection, I realized that he's selling these volumes to hotels. That was the first big aha for me about just how much volume there was available in the hotel side of the game. So I've really dedicated most of my career to understanding how to go after the volume opportunities, and this is one of the biggest ones, hotels. So I want to share all of this with you today. Now, before we go any further, there are two really important things I want to cover with you. First is you may have heard it said, or you may hear people say to you, oh, you can't call on that Marriott or that Hyatt or that Hilton or that Omni because all the decisions for beverages are made at the corporate office. Well, I'm here to tell you after more than 20 years experience calling on hotels and the headquarters of these hotels that this is not entirely true. I worked for St. Michel Wine Estates for 12 years as head of on-premise national accounts and a similar role at Constellation Brands for 5 years as head of national accounts. So I've seen a lot of money spent and time spent going after these mandates at the corporate level. The thing is, in reality, most of these hotels, especially the big ones, they have a lot of flexibility at the local property level. And I've done quite a bit of analysis on this. And really, if you do really, really well at the corporate headquarter mandates and you get wines or spirits placed on those mandated lists, at best, about 60% of a hotel's typical volume will come from the corporate mandates. A full 40%, in many cases more, are decisions made at the local level. So don't let anyone tell you otherwise. They don't know what they're talking about, or they don't want you calling on that hotel. So don't worry about the mandates. There's tons of opportunity at the local level. Now, the second important thing I have to cover with you at this point in the video is calling on hotels and having success selling a lot more wine to hotels really doesn't have a lot to do with the product itself and the presentation of that product. If you're used to selling wine by pulling samples of items that you need to sell, getting in front of buyers, popping corks, and then talking about those wines until somebody buys something, this is not going to work in a hotel environment. In fact, it's a horrible way to sell to begin with. It's very transactional. It's very focused on what the seller needs and not what the buyer wants. It's like the worst form of salesmanship that I can think of. Features and benefits selling, and especially sitting in front of a cold prospect that you have no relationship with. This style of selling went out in the 1950s. What we're talking about here, selling hundreds of cases a month to hotels, you are not necessarily selling a product. You're selling yourself as a business service provider, as a business partner, and that's what I'm going to focus on in this video. If you understand the opportunities that are available in a hotel environment and how to go after them, and then you execute your sales strategy according to the way I'm going to explain in this video, you're going to sell a lot of wine, I promise. So let's talk about how to find the best hotels to target. I like to start with the really big hotels. Now, hotels come in all kinds of shapes and sizes and price ranges. The kind of hotels I want to focus on in this video are the really, really big ones. And how do we define that? I would say if they have at least 1,000 hotel rooms and 100,000 square foot of meeting space, that is a prime target. So where do you go to get this information? Well, thanks to the internet, you don't have to go very far. You could type into a Google search, largest hotels in Boston, largest hotels in Houston and look at all of the results. When you get to the hotel pages, you will see, like let's take Dallas, for example. One of the largest hotels is the Omni Hotel downtown. When you get to their website, you can go to the meetings and events section, and it will tell you how many hotel rooms they have. It'll tell you how much square foot of meeting space they have. Why? Because they want to reach meeting planners and event planners. They want to make it as easy as possible for people to book large groups, large conventions at their hotel. So it's really easy for the seller to use this data to identify where the richest prospects are. So you can use Google. You can also use a website called Cvent, and I'll put the logo here on the screen. If you type largest hotels Boston, and then you look through the results and you look for the Cvent website, that is going to give you all kind of information about the number of meeting rooms, the total seating capacity, how many hotel rooms they have, and any other things that would make them attractive to a meeting planner. But when you get to a hotel that has 1,000 rooms and 100,000 square foot meeting space, you're talking about a lot of wine being purchased every single week. And over time, it can be quite massive. So focusing on the right accounts, doing a little research, making a list of them, this is going to really pay off. Now, so you have to look at your sales territory and the area, the physical area, the geographical area that you're responsible for, and focus your search there. Now, depending on where you live, there might not be a lot of hotels that meet this criteria, 1,000 rooms plus 100,000 square foot meeting space. So drop down to that next level, which is 800 or 900 rooms, or anything with 500 rooms or more is probably going to be a pretty good target. But I would start with the biggest, work my way down, make a nice list. Now you're ready for what I'm about to share in the rest of this video. Let's talk about the typical structure of a hotel, the anatomy of a large hotel, if you will. These hotels traditionally have 8 different departments. They are as follows. The front office, where reservations are handled and check-ins. Number 2, housekeeping. You can't even imagine how much work there's involved in managing the housekeeping for a big hotel. Hundreds of people working in that department. Number 3, the food and beverage department, and we're going to come back to this. Number 4, engineering, which is maintenance and everything that happens with the upkeep of the property. Number 5 is sales and marketing, and we're going to want to come back to this one too. Sales and marketing, where they book all the conventions, they book the groups, they book the rooms, they book the banquets and the catering and all of that. It's a very important department. The 6th department is accounting and finance. The 7th is HR. A large hotel like this will typically have several hundred employees, so it's like a little company unto itself, almost like a little city. And then the final department is the security department. There's a lot of hotel security that you might not even see when you're a guest, but in these really large hotels, security is a big concern. So if you understand these general 8 departments, and we're going to zero in on 2 of them to talk about how we can sell them wine. Next, we're going to talk about all the different places wine is sold in a hotel, and there's 8 of them. Restaurants, that's pretty obvious. Bars and lounges, banquets, room service, mini bars, the pool bar or some other kind of outdoor venue, the gift shop where you often can find half bottles or single cans of wine or bottles of wine, and then the 8th one is mini mart or some kind of convenience store inside the hotel. Some hotels combine their gift shop and their little mini mart into one. Sometimes they're separate. It really depends on the hotel. But these are the 8 different places where wine can be sold inside a hotel, which is very exciting to have 8 different ways to sell something. So let's talk through the list of roles or people that you're going to need to get to know inside the hotel. This is a long-term game, and it's a relationship game, and you're going to have to invest time into identifying who these key players are and building a relationship with them over time. You're not going to act like a salesperson. You're going to serve them, and you're going to put yourself in a position where you can help them with their jobs. And we're going to talk about what each of these roles wants as well. So the first role is the food and beverage director. This is a very, very important role. They often have a team of people. Sometimes there's an assistant food and beverage director. What you want to first do is know what these roles are, and then start identifying the name of the person that slots into each of these roles. The second role is a catering sales manager, and there's quite a few different variations of that title, but it comes under the heading, they work in the sales and marketing department. Their office is almost always in the same general location as the food and beverage person, but they're in charge of once a big banquet event or a big meeting event is booked, they're in charge of meeting with the client to plan out all the meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, breaks, all of that stuff. And so it's very important to get to know the person who's in charge of the catering sales for the hotel. Director of restaurants is another important role. Most of the large hotels have a director of restaurants. Some do not. Some will use like an assistant food and beverage director to serve in that role. It's worth paying attention to that title and see if you can identify who is the right person. It's also important to know who is the director of purchasing. The director of purchasing has a lot of autonomy when it comes to last-minute orders or looking to fill a substitution for something. They have a big, important job and a lot of power. Many wine salespeople don't stop and understand or pay attention to how important it is to know the director of purchasing, because that person can unlock all kind of last-minute opportunities, ad hoc opportunities. So it's really important to know who they are and slowly build a relationship with them. And then the last person to get to know is the room service manager. It's a little harder to get to these people, so what you want to do is start by just identifying who that person is. Some of the best ways to find this information out are in a large hotel, look for signs in the hotel that point you to the executive offices. Most of these hotels have a pretty large area, often off the beaten path, not necessarily in a main area. And you can always ask at the front desk, where are your executive offices? And they'll show you exactly where they are. When you get to the executive offices and you walk inside, there'll be a receptionist there. If I were you, I would introduce yourself, give them a business card, and tell them that this hotel is part of your area of responsibility, and you're in the process of learning as much as you can about the hotel. Don't act like a salesperson. Don't ask for an appointment. Just go through the process of identifying who's who in the hotel. Many times, depending on the receptionist there in the executive office, she might give you a business card or two. Oh, here's the business card for our director of catering. Here's our food and beverage director's card. And then you leave, because you can always come back later to schedule an appointment. You don't want to be too aggressive. This is kind of like a collecting information over time, but it really helps to know what the distinct roles are so you can begin to identify who is in each of those roles. Now, why would they want to talk to you? Because remember, we're not trying to sell them anything yet. Well, each of the people on the list that I just gave you, they depend on their vendors. They depend on people to help support their role. A food and beverage director, for example, he or she needs to be kept up to speed on the trends. What's happening in the city? What's working in other restaurants? They'd be very interested in hearing what you know. When you work in a hotel, you rarely have time to do much else. You tend to be very isolated in your own little bubble. So if you want to get close to a food and beverage director, be a good resource of information for them. And over time, you can build a relationship built on what kind of information you can bring them. They also have needs, food and beverage directors, for educating the rest of their staff. And so you could offer to do a wine tasting or a wine education. Now remember, we're not selling anything, we're giving knowledge and training, general wine knowledge information. I'm not talking about knowledge of your products. And for some of you, quick side note, for some of you watching this video, this is all new to you. You're only used to just selling your own stuff, talking about your own stuff all the time. And if you really want to sell a lot of wine, you've got to get out of that habit. But here's a good place to start. This is about serving and finding ways to add business value to the relationship. Now, what does a catering sales manager want? Well, one of the first things they're going to want is some training for their team. The people who excel at selling banquets and catering events, selling group events, they may or may not know a lot about wine, but they sure would appreciate that knowledge. So offering to do some training for them would help. Look for ways to serve them. Ask them, what can I do to help you? These are some of the things I could do. I could train your staff. I could invite you to local events. I could make sure you are aware of what's happening in the market. Just offer your help. That's one of the best things you can do. For director of restaurants, boy, they've got a long checklist of things on their to-do list. And perhaps there's a few of those things they could delegate to you, like maybe helping them take the wine inventory, or doing a survey of competitive properties, or bringing them information about food and beverage trends. There's a lot of things you could do. Training their staff. There's no shortage of things you could do to support a director of restaurants. Director of purchasing is a little tougher, and you're going to have to do it in tiny little bites. First, you identify who they are. Maybe then you pop in and introduce yourself, leave a card, and say, hey, if you ever need anything at the last minute, you can contact me, and then get out. And every once in a while, when you're on the property, pop down to the Director Purchasing office just to say hi. Maybe bring a pizza every once in a while for them and their staff. You build these relationships over time. It's going to take time, but man, will it be worth it when you get to know everyone in the hotel. The room service people are a little harder to get to. You almost have to really get an introduction from some of the other people I've already mentioned. But imagine this, fast forward 4 or 5 months from now. You walk into the hotel and there's the food and beverage director, and there's the director of catering. They recognize you by sight. They wave to you instead of pretending to be on their phone or ducking behind a column to hide from you, which is how they treat most salespeople. You want to become known in the property as someone who's there to help. And believe me, over time, the opportunities will just start falling into your lap. So I hope this is really useful. I hope you're taking lots of notes. Now, here are a few other tips to help you be successful selling more wine to hotels. First of all, you want to go to the property a fair bit, and you want to walk the property regularly. Go over to the little board that shows all the events happening in the hotel that day or the next few days. Make notations on who the big companies are that have booked meetings. You want to become a sponge of information, and you want to write it all down, and you want to learn and learn and learn. This takes time, but boy, the payoff is really big. You want to look at the schedule of upcoming events. You want to get to know what's happening on the property. If you really want to excel at this game, get to know what's happening in this city. Pay attention to the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Pay attention to what big conferences are coming up and who's going to be in town and how large they are and how many people there are. You get into the vibe of the hotel that you're trying to sell to, and the opportunities will come to the surface. You want to observe banquets in action. Stop by on a Friday night or a weeknight, 7 o'clock or so. Walk down the halls where all the private banquet events, and just kind of peek in there. Pay attention to what's happening with wine service. Are there bottles of wine on the table? Is there a little side table where they've got all the wine set up? Try to get a little picture or just make some mental notes, make a few notes. Do they have a little honor bar or mobile bar, cash bar? You want to observe what's going on so you can see what the opportunities look like. One of the cool things about banquet and catering events is they don't offer like a wide array of products. They usually have a specific catering menu and a specific bar menu, and the selection of products is really, really tight. So if you're one of the products on that list, you're going to sell a lot, which leads me to another thing. You want to go back up to the corporate office, the executive office there in the hotel, and ask for their catering package. They will probably have a little file folder, and inside are information about the different banquet events, their banquet meeting space, how many people can each room seat at a seated event, how many people can they have for a standing event, and then you'll have all of the different menus, breakfast, lunch, dinner, brunch, and included in that will be a shortened, abbreviated list of items, both wine and spirits and beer, that they sell in the banquets and catering department. You should have a copy of that and go back and study it. Ask them how often they change it. Maybe they change it twice a year and you offer to do a bit of a tasting of a wide array of products. There's so many things that you can do to get yourself plugged into these opportunities. I would also take a lot of photos. Hopefully you're using a CRM system where you keep track of all the things you learn about the account, especially the cast of characters, who's who, in what role. But it's a great place to put copies of table tents, copies of menus, copies of the whiteboard or chalkboard outside the lobby bar. A hotel is just presenting itself to you. It's presenting the opportunities. You just have to pay attention. And paying attention is my last big piece of advice. Walk the property a lot. Hang out there a lot. One of the nice things about hotels is if you're out and about doing business, maybe you have a Zoom call or maybe you need to check your email. There's plenty of places in the hotel where you can grab a coffee and sit at a table and do your work. So even just sitting there for an hour and seeing what's happening can be an incredibly revealing, eye-opening thing. So pay attention, walk the property. This is really going to help you. Just a few more closing thoughts to wrap this up. Hotels are the source of massive, massive volume because they have so many people eating, staying, drinking there. It represents enormous volume potential for wineries and craft distilleries. But you're going to have to be patient and diligent You're not going to be acting like a salesperson. You're going to act like a partner, a business partner who brings real advantages to the staff. You're going to have to get to know a lot of people, and you're going to have to take off your salesperson hat and put on your service hat. Service, dependability, and trust. These are the keys to unlocking all that volume in a hotel for your portfolio. You want to be a source of business advantage to this client by serving them. And the beautiful thing is, once you learn how to do this, you can do it for any number of hotels. When you get really close to one hotel and you start doing business and you see how much volume, you add a second and a third and a fourth one or a fifth one. But this is a rinse and repeat process that can be very, very valuable. So I hope this video has been useful to you. If you want to go deeper on this journey, just leave some comments below. I always read them and answer any questions you may have. So good luck in selling lots of wine to hotels.